This interview is brought to you by First Majestic Silver Corp., one of the world's purest and fastest growing silver mining companies.
Welcome to Cambridge House Live. I'm Vanessa Collette here at the 11th Annual Silver Summit in Spokane, Washington. I'm joined by Bill Murphy, Chairman of the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, and also a financial commentator at LaMetropoleCafe.com. Welcome, Bill. Great to have you here with us.
Good to see you again.
Bill, what's happening with the gold price today?
Well, today it's flat, and of course, one of the things that Gada gets into the way this always talk about the gold cartel. They never allow any follow-through action on the upside. You have a big day, next day nothing. Big day, next day nothing. Another big day, especially in the past week, nothing. And this is what they do. They don't allow any excitement, and today it's just typical of the way they operate, that once you have a really good day and people are really looking at gold, they never allow it to go like any other market to keep going. So today's a perfect example.
And why is that? Why are they controlling it so tightly?
Well, basically, as I mentioned, it's really to keep excitement from building in the market. And a good way to follow that is the more bullish the news, a lot of times on the gold market, you'll see it maybe go up for a little bit and then it tanks. They have certain ways that they attack the market, whether it's these flash crash attacks that have been happening, for the last 6 months and so on, and certain things that I follow on my website, and what we do is just document how they operate and manipulate the market.
So you mentioned the flash crashes. What are some of the ways that they intervene with the gold price?
Well, one of the times that a lot of people remember was in mid-April last year when 100 tons hit the market in 10 minutes, but no one was around, and then on a Friday afternoon, another 100 tons hit the market or something like that. I think it was a total of over 200 tons in a matter of minutes. And the market, the gold price just collapsed. And it was like what I call a terrorist attack. It was the same thing. It had the same effect. No other market trades like this. Nobody seems to ever explain how come it's gold and silver that trade like this on the downside, where you can document it, what has happened. Now, what we don't understand is why the CFTC doesn't just do time and sales and say who did the trades, and is this the pattern, and is it a concentrated attack, is it against the law? It's not Einstein stuff. All they have to do is check the records.
Now, Bill, every time the price moves up and down, do you always attribute it to manipulation, or how do we know when there's actually natural price movements happening?
Well, that's a good question, because a lot of people might say, well, every time it goes down, it's the gold cartel, and when it goes up, it's not. And that's
right.
It's a fair thing to say, but the irony is, a lot of times, because gold is probably priced today half of what it should be, a lot of the time it's their instigation. For example, they'll stop it at 3 a.m. New York time. They've done that, 10 out of 12 days during a recent period, where they would start it down. Well, what happens is or they'll hit the markets, and then they get everyone else to sell, and maybe they can cover. So they're there, which we document all the time, a great deal of time. Of course, it's not always them, but they do more than their share, let's say, of stopping the market, and it's why gold is so undervalued today.
I've seen you say many times that no market operates like this. Can you clarify what you mean by that?
Yes. What other market trades like gold has, whether it's no follow-through, whether these flash crash attacks, whether it's counterintuitive. A perfect example is the quantitative easing we've had the past year. All other markets did what you would expect. Stock markets went up, the oil price went up, the euro went up, Japan did quantitative easing last year, their currency collapsed, but gold and silver, instead of going up since early October, about a year ago, instead of that going up like everything else, the Dow goes up every day like this, the NASDAQ keeps going up and up and up, gold and silver, why doesn't it's so counterintuitive? Why don't people just use common sense and say, look, there's a dichotomy here. What's going on? God explains it. That's what we do.
Now, Bill, you've mentioned that the gold cabal, according to you, is running out of physical supply to distort the market. Why do you think that? And what will happen if they do run out of gold supplies? What does it mean for precious metals?
Well, as far as we're concerned, that's the key to the market. In other words, they can't just attack it in the paper market and the futures market. They've got to use physical gold or physical silver to meet demand. Every day there's a PM fix in London, which 90% of the business is priced on a daily basis. So it's not phantom, just paper trades. They have to use supply. And we believe whether it's gold, for example, people are having a hard time explaining with China almost taking up all of the gold supply produced over a year period. Why isn't the price going way up? Why is it getting killed? Well, we believe it's coming from central banks surreptitiously hitting the market to get the price down. And at some point, they're just going to run out of all they can do to keep it there. It happened in 2000, 2001 when the price was at 300. Got determined that they were using central bank gold, which was not being disclosed, and they wouldn't be able to keep it down there. There was too much demand at the price. That's what's going to happen again here, and we think it's going to set off much higher prices over the next year and next months even.
So you are extremely bullish right now on the coming price movement you see in gold happening.
Yeah, I think so, and we're at the Silver Summit, and I think the same thing is true in silver. I think that they borrowed supply from the future. I mean, last year, for example, there was all kinds of premiums, and nobody could explain it. It looked like the market at 32 was going to take off, and everyone was reporting the same thing. And I have a theory, it's just a theory, that Morgan went out, tied up all the supply, created the premiums, then went heavily short by buying puts and in the futures market, loaded up on the short side beginning of this year, and dropped the price from 35, 32, and then down to $18 and change. I think that supply has been used up, and it's just a guess. So I think that the real surprise this year is going to be that all of a sudden gold and silver, and especially silver, explodes out of nowhere.
So speaking of silver, the CFTC just closed a very drawn-out investigation into silver. What happened there?
Well, from Ghana's standpoint, of course, we've been citing J.P. Morgan for years as the major culprit. Everyone knows that they had been the major short. And there was evidence provided against them to the CFT of what they were doing in advance and so on. But basically, the long story short, I mean, J.P. Morgan, the Justice Department, is investigating J.P. Morgan in 6 different areas. Now, all of a sudden, they stopped the silver investigation. It's almost the only thing that they're not going after Morgan for is silver. But what we think what happened was they did the investigation, and they found out that one of the people behind it is the U.S. government. It's their own boss. So what are you going to do? And in terms of the Exchange Stabilization Fund is allowed to do this and work in secret and only report to the Treasury and to the President about what they're doing. Now, this is on the Treasury website. God is not making this up. And they can do it in secret. And we believe that's what they've been doing in conjunction with Morgan and some other people. And that's what the investigation showed. Now, what are you going to do? Go after your own boss? That's what happened.
So do you think that they missed anything?
No, I think that they just found out that it was the U.S. government, and they just said that they're allowed to do this in secret as per Exchange Stabilization Fund, what it says on their own website. And so what are they going to do?
So, Bill, is there anything that could convince you that there wasn't any intervention or manipulation happening in the precious metals price? I know there's a lot of people who have maybe attempted to convince you.
Well, we've been doing it for 15 years. And as my colleague Chris Powell says, we're a fact-finding organization. We put 15 years worth of facts that all add up to the same thing. And even if people don't want to, believe God, I mean, we are taking on the richest, most powerful people in the world. We know what we're up against. And it all comes up to the same thing. As I said, just use common sense of what gold and silver have been doing this year compared to all other markets. I mean, if you just did that, you say, something's not right here. And God has identified what's not right.
So, Bill, what do you think the real price of gold and silver should be today?
Well, it's interesting. A couple of years ago, you heard a lot of people talking about if gold had kept up with inflation, it would have been $2,500 an ounce. That was a couple of years ago. For some reason, no one's talking about that anymore. But basically, it suggests that gold is about half of where it should be today if it just had kept up with inflation, not taking into account all the quantitative easing and everything else that's going on.
So what do you think the price would actually be? Do you have a number in mind?
Yeah, it would be, say, $2,500 right now, $2,600.
Okay. So 25.
Silver was up to 50 just a couple of years ago, and it's a lot of conjecture why it got there, but I'm a big fan of Eric Sprott, and he thinks that silver's going to 100 at least. And I think Eric's going to be right within the next year or two.
Yeah, when I interviewed him recently, he said 2,400 for gold in the next year. So
go, Eric.
Yeah. Now, do you see many people coming around to your perspective? How hard is it for you to convince people?
Well, it was like pulling teeth, and now it's like pulling less teeth. But with all that's happened, especially with these flash crash, waterfall attacks, more people are starting to come around our way. You're seeing a lot more talk about it, at least on the internet. The mainstream press still won't allow Goddard to be mentioned, although Bernie Lowe was gracious and had Chris Powell on and over in Hong Kong. Bernie's a great guy. But basically, the truth is not allowed to be told, and that's really scary. Even if you disagree with Goddard, we've earned the right with all we've done and all the conferences we've had to be heard. And certainly the people that have spoken at our conferences are some of the biggest names in the business and some of the classiest people. So at least people should allow what we've uncovered and then make up their own minds.
Just allow the dialogue to occur.
Allow the dialogue, yes, just like this.
Now, Bill, you think the cabal is going after long-term metal holders now. What is the strategy there?
Well, what we can say is a fact in gold is that as a result of their attacks and gold collapsing $500, big investors and pension funds and so on, and people that have invested in these ETFs, the gold ETFs, have all been selling and dumping it, like 600 or 700 tons of gold. Look, the bad guys, as we would call them, knew exactly what they were doing as the price cratered down. Now, why? Because it's especially tough now because money managers have to compete against rising stock markets, other investments that are all doing well. Gold and silver getting killed, so their relative performance stinks. So because they all tend to work in sync on things, they're being forced to sell, and that's exactly what the gold cartel had expected. And we believe, and other people have mentioned it, talked about this gold is being taken from them and put into the marketplace or shipped off to China or elsewhere.
Bill, we have a question coming from one of our viewers from Eddie Drysdale, and he's asking, is COMEX in danger of running out of inventory? If so, could we see a crash in the gold ETF?
Well, you know, the gold ETF is a little different than the COMEX inventory. What we can say is that COMEX inventories have really been drawn down. And we believe it's the key to the gold taking off again is the physical market overpowering the ability of the gold cartel to do what they're doing. And I think with the negative interest rates we've seen, with inventories disappearing, China taking up all the gold, they're going to hit the wall sometime in the not too distant future. And that's what's going to fuel the price of gold higher. And silver could be explosive because I think that they've borrowed, as I said, silver from future supply, used it, and it's all of a sudden not going to be there.
Great. Well, Bill Murphy, live at the Silver Summit. Silver could be explosive. It was great having you with us today, and I look forward to having you back again soon,
Vanessa,
Bill.
it's my pleasure. Thank you. You look great.